And welcome again to Cottage Talk. This is another edition of Fulham Media Buzz. Today, it's the silly season Sunday update. Since I'm doing it on a Sunday, I thought I would give you an update on what is in the media. There are 4 stories that I'm going to be talking about in this episode for the next 15 minutes. And the players that are involved are Antonee Robinson, Yerry Mina, Max Aarons, and James Ward-Prowse. 4 stories, 4 players. I'll be sharing this in the next, like I mentioned, 15 to 20 minutes. It should be interesting. Before I go on any further, I do want to mention that I was recently a guest on a wonderful podcast I would highly recommend. If you've not listened yet, please check out the Green Pole podcast from HammyN.com. This is hosted by my good friend Dan Crawford. He had me on along with co-host of Cottage Talk and also the Green Pole podcast, Max Cohen. We talked about the silly season. Great stuff in there. I would highly recommend it. We had a very good conversation. So please do check out the Green Pole podcast. I think it will be something that will very much interest you. Okay, so let's get to it. The first story I want to talk about involves Fulham player Antonee Robinson. Okay, so let's start here. And I'll also share something that Dan Crawford said on the Green Pole podcast about the article, but I'm going to share some excerpts from the article and my thoughts on it. So here it goes. According to the Evening Standard, quote, Fulham ready to sell Antonee Robinson, but want £35 million as Newcastle consider move, unquote. So that's from the Evening Standard. I'll read a little bit from that as well. The 25-year-old is refusing to sign a new contract with just 1 year on his current deal and is now expected to leave Craven Cottage. The Cottages are considering replacement options, including Fiorentina defender Igor, who can play at both center back and left back. Newcastle and Marseille are actively pursuing Robinson, while Manchester City and AC Milan have previously expressed an interest. Okay, so that's an excerpt from the article. I want to mention this because we talked about this on the Green Pole podcast. Dan Crawford felt pretty strongly that he is not buying this story. I am going to go along with him, partially because Antonee Robinson is away on holiday after playing for the U.S. So he's not buying this. I'm not buying it either. He's not buying that fact that Fulham have even offered him a new contract yet. So again, we shall see what happens with this. This is a story that is interesting on the face of it. It makes sense. But after speaking to Dan on the Green Pole podcast, I'm not buying it. I still think Fulham have a chance to re-sign Antonee Robinson long-term. We'll see what happens when he returns from his holiday. This is just something to watch, but I'm not buying this story from the Evening Standard. We'll see how this all plays out. That's why this is the silly season. So I am a no on this. I actually would be okay with Antonee Robinson returning to Fulham Football Club. I've gone back and forth. One day I can move on from him. The other day I want him to stay. But overall, if he wants to stay, then I would want him to stay. I'll leave it at that because there's still a player in there that is full of potential. And hopefully he stays at Fulham long-term if that's what he wants to do. I'm going to say it right now. I'm okay with it. I'd be on board on it. I still think that potentially Fulham could do better at left back. But you know what? If he wanted to stay, I'm going to go with my thoughts on that right now. Again, my opinion on Robinson changes from week to week. Now I'm in on Antonee Robinson. So we'll see what happens with him. That's story number 1. Let's go to story number 2. And this is an interesting one because this involves a center back. Now, in my last episode, and everyone has probably seen all the links to Tosin, and you can buy or sell your thoughts on that. I have been pretty open that I'm ready for Tosin to leave, partially because I think he sees Fulham as a stepping stone. I don't think he is the finished article, meaning I don't think he has reached his quote-unquote potential. However, I think this is who he's going to be. So I'm ready for Fulham to move on from him to find a replacement or dare I say, a couple of replacements? Well, according to The Sun this morning, Fulham are trying to sign former Everton center back Yerry Mina on a free transfer. So I am going to read from this article from The Sun this morning, and then I'll share my thoughts on it. You're back in the room. Former Everton star Yerry Mina set to continue Premier League career with shock-free transfer. That's the headline. Fulham are looking into a deal to keep Yerry Mina in the Premier League after he left Everton. The Colombian 28 is a free agent following the end of a 5-year Goodison contract and keen to stay in England. The Cottagers like the powerful defender as a squad man and are expected to make an offer once they know if they are losing one of theirs. Okay, so that is the article from The Sun. I believe Fabrizio Romano had a follow-up on this, that Fulham have not signed this player yet, if I saw the tweet correctly, that they're in the mix to potentially sign him. Here's the thing about this. What I like about it, I do like the fact that it would be a free transfer. I think Fulham need to spread their business out, not just go for big money players and spend a lot of money on transfer fees. I think you have to balance it out with situations like this. He's 28 years old. He's played for Marco Silva before. The manager knows the player, and I think he would be a player that has the experience in the Premier League that Fulham need at the center back position. I'm buying the story, and I hope this does happen. I absolutely hope this happens. We're going to have to follow this. But Yerry Mina is pretty tall man, so we'll see. I think he would be a good fit, a good possible replacement. I know the article says squad player. We shall see, but he does have plenty of Premier League experience and also experience playing under Marco Silva, which is a bonus. This is speculation. I'm buying, and we'll see what happens from this in the upcoming days and weeks. So that's story number 2. Coming up next, I have 2 more stories I'm going to be commenting on to end Cottage Talk's full media buzz for this Sunday. Okay, so 2 more stories for me to get to in this episode of Cottage Talk full media buzz for Sunday. So let's talk about this one. I find this one interesting. According to the Daily Mail, Fulham are looking to make a move for Norwich's Max Aarons. Now, what's interesting about this is also connected to an article about Antonee Robinson. Listen, there's a lot of articles about Antonee Robinson, but I'm just going to focus on the part in regards to Max Aarons. That's what I'm going to focus on. Obviously, like I said, the article that I'm reading from does talk a lot about Antonee Robinson. So I'm just going to read the part that talks about Max Aarons. So again, from the Daily Mail article, the West London club could also be in the market for a new fullback themselves and are plotting a move for Norwich's Max Aarons. Aarons is currently on international duty with England under 21s at the Euros, is seen as competition in the right back for Kenny Tete, especially with Cedric Soares on his way back to his parent club, Arsenal. The 23-year-old is about to enter the final 12 months of his contract at Carrow Road, and Fulham are set to pull an offer of £10 million to try and tempt the championship side into selling one of their prized assets. Okay, so that's from the article in the Daily Mail about Max Aarons. Max Aarons did not play in the match today for England. I was reading that he was ill, so he did not play. So it's not like there's a situation where he is going to be not playing because there's a potential transfer ahead. It's just that he was not feeling well, so he did not play in the match today. But the situation itself, I am actually in favor for. I think this would be good for Fulham. I think this is a player, like the article says, a young player that could push Kenny Tete. And I think it's always good to have competition at a position. Kenny Tete did not have any competition last season. This is the perfect player that they should be targeting. £10 million seems fairly reasonable if that's what Fulham are looking for with this player. I'm buying the story, but in the end, we'll see if Norwich City are interested in selling. They might not be, but I hope Fulham give a shot at trying to sign Max Aarons, the young player with a lot of potential. Okay. The final story involves a player that I would love to see at Fulham Football Club. So let's talk about this right now. And I have some serious thoughts about this because there's been a lot of talk about this player. So, according to the Daily Mail, Fulham entered the race to sign Southampton captain James Ward-Prowse, and the midfielder would prefer to move to Marco Silva's side over West Ham. That's a very interesting headline in this story. Think about that. That's great to hear. But I'm going to read now from the article. And there's some interesting parts that I'm going to comment on as well because it does talk a little bit about João Palhinha. So this is what the article says. Fulham have reportedly emerged as a serious contender to sign Southampton captain James Ward-Prowse following the side's relegation to the Championship. The 28-year-old is expected to leave St. Mary's this summer and has attracted attention from Liverpool and West Ham, but the Cottagers are reportedly the team in the box seat. Mail Sport previously revealed that there was no relegation clause in Ward-Prowse's contract, strengthening Southampton's negotiation position. According to PA news agency, Fulham's interest could ultimately depend on a domino effect initiated by the sale of Declan Rice. I'm going to stop there. So for me, I'm not buying this part of it. I'm buying that Fulham are interested. I've seen a couple of places where it's been stated that Fulham have interest, and potentially James Ward-Prowse has interest in Fulham as well. The part that I don't buy is that, quote unquote, from other sources, that this could potentially be a replacement for João Palhinha. First of all, the players are completely different. They do not play the same way. He would not be a replacement for João Palhinha. If Fulham are going to bring in James Ward-Prowse, they are bringing him in to basically be a complement to a player like Palhinha, to play with Palhinha, to upgrade the club, not to replace. I truly believe that. I don't think one has anything to do with the other, regardless what the Daily Mail says, what all these other outlets say. I think this is separate. I personally think Fulham are looking to upgrade everywhere. I have a very strong feeling about that Fulham are going to spend a decent amount of money this summer. They're going to look for good business deals, like I mentioned before, with the potential move for a free transfer. But I think they're also, in my opinion, going to splurge on one or two players. This is just my feelings. I don't have any inside information on it, that they are going to spend a good amount of money for. And then they will fill in the rest of their roster, bringing in players on good business deals. But I think that they are targeting James Ward-Prowse. And if James Ward-Prowse wants to come to Fulham, this might be something that could potentially happen. We're going to follow it because, according to the article, Southampton won £50 million. That's a lot of money. I don't know if Fulham go that high for a player of that age. So we shall see how this all plays out. But am I buying the story? Hell yes, I'm buying the story, and I want the player because I want Fulham to get better at a lot of different positions. I don't want them to be replacing. I want them to be upgrading. Are there players that need to go? Yes. I've already talked about Tosin. Palhinha is a player of the core. He does not go. You add quality with him. Fulham need to find a player of the quality of Palhinha, maybe two in this window, to complement what he offers. We're talking about Palhinha. So I'm buying this story. And actually, I would love to see if it happens. I think it's going to be difficult because of what Southampton are wanting. It might be a situation where it comes down to the end of the window. If James Ward-Prowse has his heart set on coming to Fulham, maybe that pulls some weight here. Who knows? So we shall see. But that's why this is the silly season. And it's a wonderful time of the year, even though it drives me crazy. And I say it all the time. It is interesting to follow. So I like this story, and we'll see what ends up happening with James Ward-Prowse. Love to see him in a Fulham shirt. Okay. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Cottage Talk. As always, please do subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Please do also check out the latest episode of the Green Pole podcast, which is an episode with myself and Max Cohen, and it was hosted by Dan Crawford. Check that out. I enjoyed it. We do talk about the silly season during this show. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. My name is Russ Goldman. Thank you as always for watching and listening to Cottage Talk, part of the talkSPORT Fan Network.